This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Sai. We've been learning Treyasar until now, so we're going to take a break for a short amount of time. We're going to be learning a very exciting limud, Megillas Rus, which of course is the Megillah that we learn on Shavuos. And let us begin with Divrei Hakdama, that we will try to learn Megillas Rus, Be'ezus Hashem, with an emphasis on the parish of the Malbim. Okay, so let's begin with the first parak. The first pasuk gives us the backdrop and the context in which the story is taking place. Vayhi bimei shefod hashoftim. And it was in the days that of the judgment of the judges. So now the Navi is telling us that this is taking place during the period of the shoftim. Now the Tanakh is not a work of history, and therefore it's important to understand why is the Megillah beginning with this introduction. And then it says, Vayhi ra'av ba'aretz. There was famine in the land, obviously referring to Eretz Yisrael. Vayelech ish, and a man went, mi Beis Lechem Yehuda, from Beis Lechem Yehuda. And where did he go? Lagor b'stei Moav. He went to live in the fields of Moav. It doesn't say the Eretz Moav, but rather in the fields of Moav. Who? He, the Ishtai and his wife, Ushnei Vanav, and his two sons. Let's see Rashi. It says Rashi, Vayhi bimei shefod hashoftim. What does it mean? It was in the days that the judges judged. Lefnei Melech Shaul, before King Shaul reigned. Shahuyu hadoros misparnesim al yidei shoftim, that the generations were being supported and led through shoftim. Now, which shofet? Particularly, Rashi says, Uvimei Ivtsan haya. It was in the days of Ivtsan. Now, who is Ivtsan? Rashi says, Sha'amar Rabbi Seinu, our sages teach us Ivtsan ze Boyaz. Ivtsan is Boyaz. So this story is taking place during the reign of the Shofet Boyaz. And we'll see, Boyaz was actually related to Elimelech. We'll see how. Rashi continues.
Why do they call him by a different name?
Okay, we'll have to see. Why is he, in the Megillas Rus, he's referred to as Boyaz, and as a Shofet, he's referred to as Ivtsan. Vayelech ish. Now the word ish is a term of chashivas. Says Rashi, Asher Gadol Haya. He was very wealthy. Uparnes Hadar. He was the leader of the generation. So why did he leave? Doesn't say anybody else left, only Elimelech. V'yatsa me'eretz Yisrael l'chutz haaretz. The reason he left Israel, tzaros ha'ayin, because of stinginess. And how is that? Shahoisa enoi tzara ba'aniyim habam ledoichkoi lekachnenash. Right? The rabbi, the parnes, the aniyim are knocking on his door. And Elimelech, being a person of resources, was stingy. Chazal are criticizing Elimelech that he did not want to have to be being mefarnes aniyim. He couldn't take it. So basically said, like some people, they leave their house for Purim. They don't like all the people banging on their doors. Sometimes you knock on the house of the usher. He went away for Purim. Well, that's what Elimelech said. I'm going away until the situation improves. Okay, so Rabbi said, let's take a look at the Malbim. The Malbim wants to know, why is the Megillah telling us that it was in the days that the judges judge? Says the Malbim, the Navi is telling us the reason Elimelech decided to vacate. It was in the days that the judges judged. Now we have a criticism of this era that the Navi and Sefer Shoftim gives us. The Navi says in those days there was no king. Everyone just did what they wanted. It was free. Everyone was a free agent. So in other words, how could Elimelech make this mistake? The answer was, there was no gadol in those times. There was nobody to steer anybody in the right track. There was no conscience, because nobody had answered anybody. Elimelech did not have to answer to anybody. Oh, no melech. And says the Malbim, there was no shofet either. Now Rashi says there was a shofet. Rashi says, Boyaz. But maybe he was the shofet, but he wasn't the...
There wasn't one leader, one
he wasn't
chief
accepted.
justice.
He wasn't
Right.
accepted. There was no specific shofet who could sort of rule over the people. Ki haya bein shofet l'shofet. It was in between rabbis. Sha'az haya shoftim rabbim. Hachefet simali as yada. Anyone could do what they wanted. Ve'ein moira hashofet ala am. And we know when there's no government and there's no fear of leadership. What does it say in Perkei Avos? El Mole Moira Shamalchus Ish Yisrael Chaim Baloi. Right? What does it say in Perkei Avos? You should be mispalel that the government should remain intact, because without the fear of superiority or authority, then one man just swallows his friend. Okay.
Not so much fear as respect.
And in other words, the penalty and the order that is brought through the regulations of society that come about through the government is important to keep society functioning. So that's the first reason Elimelech left. We go to the next bold words of the Malbim, Vayihi Rav Ba'aretz. Another reason. Shavimei Rav Yisasva Amoin Aniyim Alu Ashirim. During famine, the poor clamor to the wealthy. V'yachrichum l'sazam lechem adagim, and they force them to give them bread. V'im lo yikchu v'chazaka, and if the Ashirim don't supply, then the Aniyim take it by force. Why do they take it by force? Again, there's no government. If there's government, if there's authority, then the Aniyim would not have the audacity just to take by force. They would have the fear of repercussion. Okay. And therefore, Vayelech Ish min Beis Lechem Yehuda Lagor B'Stei Maya. Says the Malbim, he was wealthy, and he was afraid that the Aniyim would fall upon his assets and plunder it. But nevertheless, Lo halach lehishtakeya. He did not go to remain there. What does it say? Lagor. Lagor b'stei mayav, until the anger would pass. And it doesn't say Lagor be'ir mayav, Lagor be'eretz mayav. It says Lagor b'stei mayav. He was only going to live in the field. In other words, temporarily. And, says the Malbim, despite the fact that times were so bad, most people remained in Eretz Yisrael. All the other wealthy people did not join up with him to leave Eretz Yisrael. And then points out the Malbim, even Elimelech's own family did not agree with his decision. V'gam b'nei beiso shel Elimelech, I should say, lo yantzu b'ratzain, ki lo yratzu lazav Eretz Chemda. They didn't want to leave Eretz Yisrael. Only he and his wife and his two sons. What does this mean? If you read in the pasuk, it says, Hu ve'ishtay u'shnei vanav. Why does it say? It should say, Vayelech ish ve'isha u'shnei vanav lager b'stei mayav. No. Vayelech ish mi beis lechem Yehuda. He left alone. It was his decision. And subsidiary to him, secondary to him, the other members of the family left because they had no choice. But really they did not agree with his decision.
Do we know what the source of his wealth was?
What stocks he had?
I don't know if he had stocks.
What he invested in?
He was a manufacturer. Or whatever.
We don't know. Now, the Malbim points out a davar nifla. He brings down two different statements of Chazal, and he explains how they fit together. There's a medrash that says that Elimelech was the Gadol Hadar. He said, now all of Klal Yisrael will be mashkim lepischi, therefore he ran away. That's one statement of Chazal. He said that the Jews will go to his door. Mm-hmm. They will go to his door. Another statement of Chazal is that not only was there Rav for Lechem, but there was also Rav for Torah. In other words, it was a time where Torah was also lacking. People did not have Torah knowledge. And the Malbim says, he brings down the statement of Chazal, Kol hamalim einav min hatzdaka, anyone who closes his eyes from charity, kilu oived akum. It's like serving idols. Also, Chazal say, someone who's not oisek in chesed is doime kemi she'ein lo eloka. Now listen carefully to these two statements. It says, Kol hamalim einav min hatzdaka, doime kilu oived avodah zara. One statement of Chazal is, if you close your eyes from giving tzedakah, it's like serving idols. Another statement of Chazal is if you're not oisek and stuck of a chesed, it's as if you have no God. It's a stira. What's worse, to be an atheist or to be an idol worshipper? It's worse to be an idol worshipper. One thing, you don't believe in God? Okay, ahal b'tzara. But to worship sticks and stones, that's even worse. So one place Chazal say, if you ignore tzedakah, you're like an idol worshipper. One place it says, it's doime kami she'en lo yaloika. So says the Malbim, Rav Hai says like this, that if an ani knocks on your door and you ignore him, that's the worst. That's really embarrassing. He's coming, he's knocking on your door. It's shameful to him for you to ignore him. That's like being Oived Avodah Zarah. But what if you know there are people in need and you don't go out of your way to help them? That's only doime kamisha ein la eloika. So there are two levels. To ignore someone who comes to you, that's like idolatry. To not to participate and go be active in helping those in need, that's like you have no God. Says the Malbim, there's another thing in this world that's doime kamisha ein la eloika. Who else is like? Who else do Chazal say is doime kami she'en lo yalaka? Someone who leaves Eretz Yisrael to go to Chutz La'aretz is doime kami she'en lo yalaka. The Gemara says at the end of Ksubis that someone who forsakes the Holy Land, kol hadar b'chutz la'aretz, doime kami she'en lo yalaka. So listen carefully. Elimelech says to himself, there are a lot of poor people. If I don't give them, it's going to be doime kami she'en lo yalaka. So what am I going to do? Go to Chutz La'aretz? That's also doime kami she'en lo yalaka. Either way, it's doime kami she'en lo yalaka. So I might as well stay here. Why leave Eretz Yisrael? I might as well stay here. In other words, he had a dilemma. He didn't want to give tzedakah. So to stay home and not give tzedakah, that's doime kami she'en lo yalaka. To leave Eretz and go closer, that's also doime. So why pack my bags? I might as well be like I don't have a God in the comfort of my own home.
Well, somebody described him as Gadol Ador. The Gadol Ador is confronting himself with this kind of question. He's not a Gadol Ador. If he's confronting himself with this kind of question,
Yeah, so
Gadol Ador doesn't come to this situation.
We have to understand what exactly, if Chazal are criticizing him, it must have been on a dakes level. What exactly was his fear? Why didn't he want to give tzedakah? What was his cheshbon? We don't know yet why he was being stingy. But apparently he was trying to save up his money.
Well, up to this point he hadn't been tested. Now the test came, he failed.
He was giving on a regular basis. Now there was Rav Ba'aretz, so his funds were being stressed.
He had this dilemma, and he didn't know whether should he leave, should he not leave. So he says to himself, to leave, it's doime kami she'en lo yalaka. To stay and not give tzedakah, it's doime kami she'en lo yalaka. I might as well be an atheist in the comfort of my own home than to leave Eretz Yisrael. But the problem was, now they're knocking on his door. And if they knock on your door, then it's not just like you're doime kami she'en lo yalaka. Then you're like an Oived Avodah Zarah. So now he has a pasha decision. Now it's kedai to leave and be doime kami she'en lo yalaka than to stay and be like an Oived Avodah Zarah. In other words, so long as they weren't knocking on his door, he has a right to be doime kami she'en lo yalaka in the comfort of his own home. But now that they're knocking on his door and he's going to be like an Oived Avodah Zarah, now he's actually doing something better. He's improving the situation by leaving because he's downgrading himself from an Oived Avodah Zarah to someone who's merely doime kami she'en lo yalaka. That's where the other statement of Chazal comes in. Chazal tell us that we have a tradition that a Talmid Chacham will not become poor, right? Nar hayisi v'gam zagan v'lo hayisi tzadik nezav. We have a tradition, Gemira de tzurber merban loy ma'ani. In fact, the Gemara, we see a lot of poor Talmid Chacham. Says the Gemara, they could become poor, but they won't reach the level where they're going to be knocking on the door. Says the Malbim, had it not been that there was a famine in Torah, in other words, had it not been that the door was so impoverished from Torah, and people were Talmid Chachamim, then Elimelech never would have had to leave. Why? Because if they would have been Talmid Chachamim, they never would have been coming knocking on the doors. Because Talmid Chachamim don't have to knock on doors. So they would have just been in need. And Elimelech would have said, okay, I'll ignore them. Why leave my home and leave Eretz Yisrael and be doima k'misha elokah? I could do so in the comfort of my own home. But now that the dar was ma'ani from Torah, now that they were not learned, so now they were forced to knock on doors. Now that they're forced to knock on doors, if he's going to ignore them, he's going to be an Oyed Avodah Zarah. That's why he had to leave. So that's what the Malbim gives in his footnotes. So like a little drush over here. What exactly precipitated this? Okay.
So, we once learned, when it says ish, doesn't it denote some kind of a high level of a person?
Well, sometimes
they called
ish
him an ish,
refers
right?
to a malach. Refers to a malach, Gabriel. Yeah, and it does. We said, according to Rashi says, Asher Gadol Haya.
That's Asher, that's material stuff. It's not Ruchnius, and I thought ish
Ish means a lashon of chashivas, right? For example,
it could be material and not tzidkus.
We have shlach lecha anoshim. Anoshim is lashon of chashivas. Here too, look at the Malbim on the next pasuk. Let's read the next pasuk. The Shem Hoish, the name of this man, Elimelech.
Why does the Malbim call Avimelech all the time?
It's a printer's error. It's Elimelech. Avimelech is the king of the Plishtim.
Right.
Vishem, I have another Malbim over here. They recently republished Megillas Esther and Rus with the Malbim. We'll see if they corrected him. Yeah, in the old editions of the Malbim, he's called Avimelech, but that was not his name. That was not his name. Okay. Vishem Hoyish Elimelech. Vishem Ishtoi Naomi. Vishem Shnei Vanav Machloin V'Chilyon. Rabbi say, who do you think is older? Machloin or Kilyon? Machloin. His name is mentioned first. L'chayra, he was the older one. Ephrasim. We'll see what the word Ephrasim means. Mibeis Lechem Yehuda. Vayavayu Sidei Moav. They came to the field of Moav. Vayiyu Sham, and they were there. Good morning, America. Shkayach. They came there and they were there. Right? My plane arrived in Eretz Yisrael and I was there. Really? I thought you were elsewhere. I thought your plane arrived in Eretz Yisrael and you were in Zimbabwe. I didn't. What does the pasuk mean? And they were there.
If you're in Pashtus, you could say, and they decided, they got there, and they decided, okay, this is where we're going to stay. No, it wasn't that their arrival was temporary.
Right. So in other words, even though the pasuk says Lagor b'steimav, their intention was merely to be there temporarily. But now the pasuk is saying when they got there, they decided to maintain their, stay there permanently. Let's see the Malbim pasuk. Let's see Rashi first. Ephrasim. Ephrasim means chashuvin, important. V'chein, likewise we have in Shmuel, ben Toichai, ben Suf, Ephrasi, Abigunos, Ra chashivusai. Ra chashivusai. He saw his chashivos. Sharei Isi Egline. Re'ei Chashivusai. Look at the Chashivos of Elimelech. Because Sharei Hesi Egline Melech Moav. Egline, the king of Moav, married off as Bitoy Lamachline. The Amar Mar, Rus, Bitoy Shel Egline Hoisa. Rus was the daughter of Egline. So Rashi says, look how Chashav Elimelech was. If a little Yidala comes to a country, what are the chances that the president, prime minister, emperor of that country will wed his daughter to the daughter of that Yidala? But over here you see the Chashivas of Elimelech, that Egline, the king of Moav, wed his daughter Rus to Elimelech. L'maisa, if you look at Tosfos and Masechta Ksubos, Tosfos makes a cheshbon that it's impossible to say that Rus was the daughter of Egline. Because I believe Tosfos says that Rus was the granddaughter or great-granddaughter of Egline, because Tosfos makes a cheshbon. We know that Egline came from who? Goliath. And who killed Goliath? David. How could David have killed Goliath? That would not work out in the timeline. Actually, it's the Tosfos in Yevamis on Daf Mem Ches. Tosfos says in Yevamis on The Tema. Rus bas benoi shel Egloin benoi shel Balak Melech Moav Hoisa. Tosfos says not only was she not the granddaughter of Egloin, she was not even the great granddaughter. He says V'yisham de bas benoi shel Egloin lav dafka el klam de mizarei hoisa k'may ben benoi shel Nimrod. In other words, it doesn't mean that Rashi is arguing. It could just mean she was obviously of royal blood. Rus was of royal blood. And she never would have been wed to Machlain had they not been important people. So that's one pshat in Ephrasim. Davar acher, another pshat. Ephrasim, Beis Lechem Kruya Ephrat. Ephras. Beis Lechem is called Ephras. Like we have...
That's the Chumash, right?
Yeah.
Right. Very good. So, in fact, the Malbim quotes this. The Malbim says that originally the name of the city was Ephras, and then it was given the name Beis Lechem. Like it says, Ve'ekbereha sham b'derach Ephras, he Beis Lechem. So really, originally it was called Ephras, and then it was named Beis Lechem. Let's see the Malbim. V'shem ha'ish. Be'er shoyish hanoida b'shem. The Navi is saying this is a distinguished man. A man of reputation. Loi levad hu, not only he was a man of reputation. In other words, it already said in Pasuk Aleph, Vayelech ish. Why does it say V'shem ha'ish? It's saying this is a man of reputation, and his wife and children also had a very fond reputation. Kigam ishtay ubanav hayu anshe shem. V'hu tam el yitziyasai. And it's continuing to explain why he left. Why did he leave? He was so well known. He felt the Aniyim would abuse him. It could be also to justify what Elimelech did, is that even though a person is obligated to give tzedakah, whether it's a tenth, or according to the Shita of the Rambam, a choynesh, a fifth, but they were Masakin and Usha, you're not allowed to give more than a fifth. Maybe Elimelech, and the Malbim said that in those days, if you weren't given the Aniyim, because there were no Shoftim, the Aniyim would just take everything by force. So is a person obligated to remain in a place where you had Aniyim and there was no recourse? What was one supposed to do if an Ani came and moved into your house or took away your possessions? What was one supposed to do? There was no king, there was no Shofet. It was Ish Hayosh Ben Avtasa, it was anarchy. It was like Detroit, right? It was like living in a third world country like Detroit. So
you're going to get some...
yeah, right. So...
Southfield's excluded.
Yeah.
Oak Park.
Okay. So maybe that's why he left. Maybe he felt he was justified in leaving. And especially with his reputation and it was well known that he was wealthy. He said...
Would he have been able to say that I gave my 20%, so any more Niyim that come... I'm relieved of my responsibility. I mean, if it was anarchy, they could say we don't care, we still aniyim, we need the money.
That's the point. It was anarchy.
Right.
So
But he could have said halachically, I'm done.
Let's say...
Well, if somebody's starving, they're not going to listen to halakha.
We know that, but yet we have that as a
they were
axiom.
Masakin and Usha not to give more than 20%. Well, what if people are really in need? Is their life in danger? So if yes... then look, could he have said, my family's life is also in danger? It's chayecha koidam. Apparently, it's not so simple just to criticize him and say, yeah, he was a stingy guy, he wanted to hold on to his money, he was investing, he wanted to save up for his great-great-grandchildren. According to the Malbim, they were living in chaos. So, first of all, it's saying he was a man of reputation, that's why he left, and also it's explaining why he was going to be so severely punished. Because he was a man, look what he says, the Malbim says, ish gadol, he pel liban shel Yisrael b'tzeisai. It was demoralizing for the Jews that he left. When the captain forsakes ships...
Yeah, he's also a source of a lot of funding of a lot of
projects. It was demoralizing. It really, burst their bubble, and it was a chil Hashem, says the Malbim. Now what about Ephrasim, Beis Lechem Yehuda? Says the Malbim, Beis Lechem hoisanik v'eschila b'shem Ephras. Beis Lechem was originally called Ephras. V'achar kach nasan la shem Beis Lechem, like it says the Ekbara Shama Derech Ephras. He Beis Lechem. V'gam hoya mishpacha migdolei hayacha shel Shevet Yehuda. He was also from the distinguished family of Shevet Yehuda. Shevet Yehuda was often called Ephrasim. Like the wife of Kalev was called Ephras, which was a Chashivas. So he was not only from Beis Lachem, he was also from the distinguished family of Beis Lachem. Says the Malbim, Vayavoyu, that even though originally they only came Lagor, but after they got there, Shabbos, they might Hayu Sham Ratzalamar Osis Skimu Badaitam Lishar Sham Bikfios. They decided to remain there indefinitely. Originally their intention was only Lagor, but ultimately they decided to stay there. Pasuk Gimel. Vayamos Elimelech. Elimelech died. Ish Naomi. The man of Naomi. Now we know that they were married. It already said in Pasuk Beis, V'shem Ish Naomi. It said in Pasuk Aleph, he came with his wife. Why does it repeat again? Ish Naomi. Vatishar she remained. Ushnei Banah, and her two sons. Rashi brings down here the Divrei Chazal. Lama Nemra, why does it say the man of Nami? Mikan Amru, Ein Ish Meis Elo Leishtai. From here we see that when a husband dies, it's painful to the children, maybe painful to siblings, maybe painful to parents, but the one who suffers the most is the wife. Ish Nami.
And the reverse is true too. When the wife dies.
Yeah, the Gemara says that it's very painful. But here Chazal are focusing on the suffering of the Isha. And then, okay, now look at the Malbim. Vayamas, you have the Malbim Pasuk Gimel? Come, let me give you the next sheet. This one, the right-hand side, did not come out as clear, but if you follow along, it should work. Here. Pasuk Gimel, the Malbim.
1 second.
Vayamas, v'al-yedei shehiskim liishar b'chutz haaretz, nanash takeoff vayamas. Listen to how we're reading the pasuk. We just learned in pasuk Beis, vayiyu sham, vayiyu sham. Right? What are the words immediately before vayamas? Vayiyu sham. Vayiyu sham. Vayamas Elimelech. It's one thing you
Because he
leave.
decided to do it. That's why he died.
One thing he left, and it was only lagur.
Right.
It wasn't permanent. Okay, Rabbi Hashem is having patience. When he made the decision, he's going to remain there. See how the Malbim reads the juxtaposition of the words. Vayiyu sham, vayamas. Vayidei shiskim liishar b'chutz haaretz, nenash teka vayamas. Ubeyer madua nenash hu. Now, why was he punished and not Nami?
He was the one who made the decision.
Hu haya ish Nami. He's the man of the house. He wears the pants in that family. He's ish Nami. Umoishal Allah. He rules. The ikar hachet misyaches elav. The Chazal Omru. Shetchila hanishash. Now this is a rule that we're going to see the Malbim sets forth in this sefer, and that is that before the Rebbe Hashem punishes someone, he sends punishment to their assets before he punishes them physically. The Chazal Omru Shetchila hanishash b'mamoinoi ki ein bal harachamim poyeh b'nefashos tchila. The Rebbe Hashem does not touch life before he first sends a warning. So Chazal tell us that before he was punished, he lost his money. Elimelech lost his money. V'zemeramis v'mashikasav ishnami. Now listen carefully. Isn't it odd that this man, this Elimelech, prestigious person, all of a sudden now, how is he known? He's known as Nami's husband? No, but we didn't even mention Nami's name when they left. When they left in Pasuk Aleph, and he had a wife. And now who is he? Husband of Nami. Says the Malbim, because he used to have money. When he had money, he was a bar hachid. He was Elimelech. Who's Nami? Nami cooked supper for him. That's who Nami was. Now he lost his money. He's worthless. Who needs him? Now all he is he's the husband of Nami. Okay? So ki asher gado Elimelech hu ba'atzei noid b'shem. A wealthy man like that is well known by his name. We would have thought that people would have said, the wealthy man Elimelech died. The Koshikenim Hayu Be'eretz Yisrael. Certainly, if he was in Israel, then people would have said Elimelech, the Gadol Hadar, died. But now that he lost all his money and he's in a foreign land, so nobody knows he's a Gadol Hadar. Elamai, how's he known? From his money. He doesn't have that either. So now, how is he known? Who died? What did it say in the newspaper headlines? Nami's husband died. So the Malbim is detecting from the nuance of the pasuk that he must have lost his money, and that's how Chazal derive it. Now, interesting. What does the pasuk say? Vatishayer he. She's Shirayim. Her and her two sons are left.
But you could ask, if he lost his money, then he wouldn't worry about that business of whether he was considered Oved Avodah.
He should have come back.
Should have come back.
Should have come back.
He wouldn't have that worry anymore.
Maybe that's partially why he was punished. Now he has no excuse to be there.
So and he decided
and he
to
still
stay.
remained. Now, Vatishar Ha'isha says the Malbim, and they didn't learn their lesson to return to Eretz Yisrael. Now, the Medrash says Vatishar, they became like the Shirayim of a Karban Mincha. What does that mean? The terminology she'er is only applicable if most was taken away and only a little bit remained. So how could you say one of the people were killed here? The other three survived. How could you call them Shirayim? The answer is because he was the Iker. He was the most prestigious one. He was the most well-known and important one, and therefore it's appropriate to say Shirayim. Let's see one more pasuk. Vayisu lohem nashim ma'aviyos. They married Moabite women. Shem ha'achas Arpa. The name of the one was Arpa, v'shem ha'shenis Rus. Vayesh v'sham, and they lived there ka'eser shanim, 10 years. Now, says the Malbim.
Do we know how long it was that Elimelech lived in Moab before he passed away? We know that after Elimelech died, they lived there about 10 years. Well, we're not even sure about that because they don't know how long it was before they married.
We don't know. Says the Malbim, these sons, these banim, increased their sin by marrying Nashim Ayaviyos. And the Malbim is going with the Shita.
It's not awesome to do that, right?
It is if you don't convert them. In other words, yes, the Isser of marrying a Moabite man is even if he converts.
Right.
You can't join the Kahal. Mm-hmm. But a Moabite woman, you could marry if she converts. The Malbim is going with the opinion that they were not converted. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the Targum Yonis and Menuziel, if you look in Pasuk Dalid, look, it says in Pasuk Dalid, Va'avru al gezeras meimra d'Hashem, they violated God's command, Unetalu l'hai neshim nochran, and they married foreign women, Min benas mayav, Shum chada Arpa, the name of one was Arpa, V'shum teniesa Rus, Pasuk Hey, look at the Targum, V'al, okay, good. V'al da'avru al gezeras meimra d'Hashem, v'yischatanu ba'amim nuchron, because they violated God's command of marrying marrying goyim, iskatau yomeyon. Their days were cut off, umisu avtarveyon, and they both died. So Targum Yonis and Menuziel is clearly saying that they married them begeyusan, in their state of being a Gentile. The Malbim also says that they did not convert them. Interestingly, the opinion of Rashi later on in Rus is Rashi says also they did not convert Machlon did not convert Rus and Nami, because as we're going to see Arpa and Nami, because Arpa and Rus because it was not considered, we'll see, Eishas Achav Shahaya Ba'ilamai. That's the sheet of Rashi, also says they did not convert them. And Tosfos in Masechta Ksubos also says that Boaz and Rus were not an Almoin Shenasa Almana, because Rus was not an Almana, because Rus was never married to Machloin, because he did not convert her. So according to Rashi, Tosfos, Targum Yonis and Menuziel, the Malbim, they married Goyim. The Zohar HaKadosh, however, disagrees, and he says, Chas v'shalom, that Machlon and Kilyon, who were two Gedolei Hadar, married married goyim, and the Zohar says that they converted them. We once spoke out a shita of the Rogachover, and for those of you listening, there's we've given a share. The Rogachover has a in-between approach, how they did convert them, but it was a questionable gerus, and ultimately Rus proved that her gerus was authentic, and Arpa proved that her gerus was not, and Arpa goes back home, and she becomes the mother of, Arpa was the mother of Golias. Arpa was the mother of Golias, and Arpa was either the granddaughter or great-granddaughter of Egloin Melech Moya. But there is a considerable discussion on this, but most Shitos say that they married Goyim here. So the Targum that we just read says because they married Goyim, yeah? But the Malbim, if you give me one more minute, the Malbim says that no, the reason why they died is because they decided to remain in Moab.
They have no reason to stay there anymore. They have no money. They wouldn't have to worry about being considered over there. Should have gone back.
Okay, so Rabbi said, let's hold it up.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.